What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of FormuLATTE. My name is Shreyas, and this is my co-host Saranj. And today we're going to be talking to Mr. Andrew Meltzer, an attorney at Sussin Greenwald and Wessler, which is a law firm based out of Cranberry.
Thank you so much. Nice to have you here.
Mr. Weltzer graduated from the University of Delaware with a degree in history and political science before earning his Juris Doctor at Drexel University. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where's your background and how did you grow up?
Excellent. So I grew up right around here. I grew up in West Windsor. I went to the West Windsor Plainsboro School District, and all of my grandparents lived in Monroe Township. So I have been here through everything. I've seen how this development used to be farms. I've been through almost every 55 plus community here. I've spent a lot of time actually in Monroe High School, different events. So it's a great place to be, Central Jersey. Definitely. In terms of my trajectory, it really was... It's actually really interesting how it came to pass. So when I was in school, just by way of background, Sussin Greenwald and Wessler is a special education law firm. So we work with parents of students with disabilities to get them the appropriate school services. If the school district is not providing what the students should need in order for them to be successful, we come in and work with the school district to try to develop a plan to address the students' needs. And we also... if we're not able to reach an agreement as attorneys, we can then resort to litigation to try to get to a resolution. Right. But in special education cases, most cases end up in settlements, meaning that the parties come to a mutual agreement without having to go to trial. But the reason I went into this area of law is that I myself was a student in special education when I was in school. I had learning differences growing up, and for most of elementary school, I was in the wrong type of classroom. I was in a smaller class. There were students there that had behavioral issues. My issues were more academic. So my parents really had to fight to get me the support I needed. But once I got that, I was able to be mainstreamed more. I then went into middle school and high school with fewer accommodations, took honors in AP classes. My passion was always history and politics and government. Right. So I always knew I wanted a career oriented toward those subjects. And as I got through college, I realized that in order to make a difference in those areas, you need to know the laws of the land. Definitely. So I decided to go to law school, and I got a scholarship to Drexel University School of Law. So I said, sounds great. And I love Philly. So to live in Philly for 3 years was awesome. Yeah. But as I went through law school, you get internships. So that's how you often decide what area of law you want to go into, because you don't really know what's going on in certain practice areas until you actually get into the nitty-gritty of it. Right. So my first internship in law school was actually at the New Jersey Attorney General's office, and I was placed randomly into the education law section. So I work with the State Department of Education to look at different issues, including special education. Right. So I got a working knowledge of the special education legal framework, of which is about a 200-page document. Right. Yeah. So then what happened was, after law school and I passed the bar, I was trying to figure out what type of law I wanted to do. And I reached out to a couple special education law firms, and I shared my story. And what I realized is that it gave me the ability to have a unique perspective with clients, especially because even though my issues may have been different from them, I have some idea of what they were going through. So I was driving around visiting my grandmother in Monroe Township, and I passed by Sussin Greenwald and Wessler. I didn't know anything about them. So I decided then to look them up, and I saw they were special education law. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to the managing partner, Stacy Greenwald, and I said, I don't know if you're hiring anyone, but this is my story. And she said that they'd like to meet me. So a few days later, I sat in for an interview. I laid it out there, and I ended up getting an offer. And I've been there almost 10 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's extremely inspirational how while you were not given the best resources in your elementary education, you could use what you had to get into law school. So could you, to backtrack, could you give us like a little more detail about how law school and undergraduate schools work? Because I'm sure our viewers would like to know a little bit more about that.
Sure. Do you mean in terms of special education or just the college and law school experience?
Just the college and law school experience.
Sure. So college I actually liked more than high school. And I actually found that it was easier than high school. It's not going to be like that for everyone, but certainly Monroe Township is a good high school. If you go to a lot of schools around here, they work you really, really hard. Yeah. Yeah. And certainly there's high expectations. But if you do the work and you do well, college, the main thing is if you do your work, you're going to do well. But there's a lot of distractions along the way. Like, there may be parties, there may be other extracurricular activities. But if you find the right balance, it's going to be really, really good. The other thing too is that colleges have amazing resources in terms of professors, internship opportunities that you really have to seek out for yourself. Your parents are not there for you. So you have to be the one to advocate for yourself and make it known that you're interested in something. So in college, I ended up interning for our local congressman. At the time, it was Rush Holt. Now it's, I think, Bonnie Watson Coleman.
Yeah, it is.
So that gave me a lot of really good experiences. And then with law school, it's different in that you're really focused. You don't have to take math, obviously. Most lawyers are bad at math. That's why we become lawyers. And law school is even more like that. It's like on steroids. You really have to focus. There's a lot more temptation to have fun because, you're in a city or you're with other people that are like-minded. But law school, it's not always that the work is hard. There's just a lot of it. It's impossible to cram. You have to have discipline. But it's extremely rewarding, and you end up really being able to help a lot of people. So Drexel was really cool in that it's an experiential law school. So it's all about giving you real-world experience. So when I was in law school, I got to do something called a co-op, which is like an internship with the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. So I got to prosecute criminal cases under the supervision of another attorney, and I was able to prosecute about 20 trials.
Nice.
Which is cool. Very intimidating at first, but you have to learn to just be like, and throw all your worries to the side and just focus on doing your job.
Exactly. Yeah, and you were talking about balance, and a lot of the kids in my school are, on the teetering side where they don't know which way to go. They're either fully immersed in academics or fully immersed in sports. So what would be your advice on balance, and how would you, work around some of the obstacles you face through that?
So it's a really great question because general education, special education are very similar in this regard. In that, I think one of the most important things is you don't have to be excellent at everything.
Right.
If there are certain things that you find you're really, really good at or really interested in, you'll become good at it. So I knew going in, math was not my thing. It was just because of my learning differences, it was a lot harder for me. So, but when it came to history and politics and government, I found that I was so interested in it. And that allowed me to study extra hard on those subjects and at the same time, balance things out. Sports are really important. And I'm seeing now that I'm in my 30s that, I probably should have paid more attention to sports growing up. But, having that outlet to work to get some of the anxieties and stresses out, because healthy body and healthy mind are both so important. Definitely. But I think one of the other important things too is, and I see this a lot with the kids I work with a lot of high schoolers. The most common issue with high schoolers now in special education is anxiety. There is, especially since the pandemic, because you missed out on a lot of school years. So oftentimes what I see is that in high school environments, there's so much pressure put on the students by themselves. The families have high expectations, the teachers have high expectations, but taking care of yourself, having a break every now and then is so important. So I can't emphasize it enough because my high school and Monroe Township High School are very similar. And I still remember those things greatly, but it's competitive, sure, but make sure to take care of yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think due to that anxiety, many high schoolers eventually, after doing really well in elementary school and middle school, they just lack a drive to keep going because it's extremely exhausting. So are there any values that you especially hold true to yourself that give you the drive to keep going every day?
That is an awesome question, and I think everyone doing podcasts should ask that question. The most important thing is find what interests you, not what other people think you should be interested in, but what interests you. Because if you're going to find something that motivates you, you're going to blow past any expectations. Completely. So, and that's for me. I mean, I love history. I love politics. I get to do that with law every day. And certainly the legal practices can be very stressful. You can have hundreds of clients, hundreds of individualized cases. And when you're a lawyer, people are coming to you during arguably the most stressful time in their lives. And in our case, it's because a parent's kid is not getting what they need and they're experiencing struggles in school. And for parents, that can be devastating. And they want things to happen right away. But even though we're lawyers, we can't make things happen overnight. So using that motivation, what motivates you, it helps you get through those tough periods. Because there are times where you feel like, am I making a difference? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? But finding it in yourself, that internal drive, is the most important thing.
I think,
And it takes time. For everyone, it's different too. Like everyone discovers their own path at different times.
Exactly.
So if you don't have it now, don't worry. Some people don't figure it out till they're in their 30s.
Yeah.
yeah, it could definitely be very mentally degrading, and I can definitely see like it could be very mentally degrading to like think about those types of cases, especially when people expect you to do everything, even though you're a lawyer. Like you can't really solve every problem. So like in terms of like early becoming a lawyer, what were some of the challenges that you faced and the lessons you learned from those challenges?
So with regard to law school, it's everyone starts at the same thing. Everyone's
Right.
starting new. So you may have been a strong student in the past, but it doesn't matter then because everyone starts it with a blank slate. So you have to really put in the work. I think one of the biggest things is learning how to navigate the fields as a young lawyer, because you're dealing with people that have loads more experience than you. I had a trial where the lawyer was a lawyer longer than I had been alive. So,
Wow.
and was a vaunted authority on the area of law that we were litigating over. We ended up not being successful at the original trial, but then on appeal in federal courts, I tried a few different arguments that we thought that the previous judge made errors on, and the federal court agreed, and we prevailed on several aspects of the appeal, and it's now going to be relitigated again, or we may reach an agreement. But I think the most important thing is know that even if you're not experienced, you still have a lot to offer. And
Yeah.
a lot of times judges, you never know which way they're going to go. Even if you think you have a slam dunk case, the judge can have a completely different view of things. And it may even just be, they just something resonated with them that you may not have thought it was important, but it was to them. And even though the other lawyer may have so much more experience, it might carry the day.
Yeah. And so I feel like being a lawyer simulates like, everyone's path in life a little bit. Having a goal to like win a case or, argue for your own, like whatever. I feel that you need to find what you're interested in a lot. And that goes to like being exposed to a different, sectors in academics and so on and so forth. So how would you go about like finding what you're interested in and, a little bit of advice for the high schoolers?
And that's, again, an excellent question, because I think that's one of the lost arts these days with social media. And I mean, I sound so old, but I, certainly I remember high school a lot. But there's no substitute for reaching out to people, really, truly. And that's what's great about this podcast, is that you're bringing people from different sectors to help your fellow students understand what they could do. But I remember when I was in law school, my job, I felt, was I wanted to meet as many lawyers as possible and as many practice areas as possible. And you learn, based on your own life experiences, what could be a match for you or not.
Exactly.
Like when I did the district attorney's office, even though I felt the work was really important and valuable, I realized I didn't want to do criminal law. It felt a little bit conflicted for me in terms of how things were going, because there's a lot of politics involved in criminal law too. But when I found education law, and this was just through meeting education lawyers, I thought, wow, I can really resonate with this. This makes a lot of sense to me. So that was really important. But even now, I still go out and meet different types of people, because you have to do that as part of being a lawyer. It's not just litigating cases. You have to meet people. You have to look for, how you can be a resource to potential clients, because my parents didn't know you could hire a special education attorney.
Right.
And there's not that many lawyers in the state that do this. There's maybe 4 or 5 firms that do this, and a similar number of solo lawyers. So a lot of it is getting yourself out there that you are a resource. Like I go around to different schools. I go around to different parent groups, educating groups. I give presentations to legal conferences. But you have to do that because, again, there's no substitute for meeting people and building that trust. Trust is one of the most important parts of being a professional. Your reputation is everything. It takes a long time to build trust, but a few mistakes could really hurt your trust with clients, with the court,
100%.
and everything. So it's so important to be honest, to be straight and direct, even if it's telling people what they don't want to hear.
Right.
I've had to have difficult conversations with parents that feel like what their child needed was different, but then we had them seen for evaluations and we found it was something completely different overall. And we had to tell them, like, look, we have to go in a different direction with the case, but we're doing this because it's going to help your child be independent and be successful in life. And, telling them what they want to hear is only going to lead to disappointment. And that's something that's invaluable to other professions too. You always want to be direct, and you want to tell them what the positives and negatives of decision making are.
So, obviously you're a very well-versed person, and you talk about the importance of reaching out and communication throughout your life. And other than building trust, what are some other values that you hold in this communication that you never want to just some values that you hold in communication?
I think, again, one of the most important things is being direct with people.
Okay.
You don't want to make them, if they're confused, clarify things. A lot of times with being a lawyer, people think about legalese, very complex language. The most effective lawyers are ones that know how to talk to real people and to break things down so everyone can understand. And lawyers have a lot of rules of professional conduct and ethics we have to follow.
Definitely.
So we have to be really careful about making sure that clients understand what decisions they have to make, what are the positives and negatives if we were, for example, settle or go to trial, because these are very expensive decisions and they can have a huge impact. And the worst thing is you don't want a client to come back and say, I signed something or I agreed to something, but I didn't understand it. You always have to make sure everyone understands what they're going through.
Exactly. And I feel that communication is key, but on a wider scale, networking. I feel that networking, just like you said, is something where you can reach out to people for help. You can go meet new people, explore your interests. So how would you go about integrating networking into finding something that you love to do? And, how would you use that to guide some of your pathways?
Excellent. And so even though I was talking about how social media isn't everything, I got to say LinkedIn is really good.
Definitely, yeah.
That's honestly, I messaged the firm on LinkedIn, just a cold message saying, I don't know if you're hiring or not, but let me just tell you a little bit about myself. And that helped lead things in motion. I've met a lot of people through LinkedIn. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to offer advice. And by showing that you're getting out there, you're willing to speak to people and learn, it impresses people. So it's really important. And you're not going to have a good conversation every time, or you may not know what to ask, but when in doubt, ask people about themselves. My mom always says, in order to be interesting, be interested.
Right.
So ask people about themselves. People love to talk about themselves.
100%.
I do as well. But who doesn't?
Yeah.
So, that's a really important value. Another thing too is finding networking groups. So for example, in law school, I was part of something called the Brandeis Law Society, which is a society of Jewish lawyers in Philly. And it was a great way to get to meet other lawyers too. They have them for many different affinity groups, different professional networking events. There are many different professional groups involved in different fields. So looking around and finding what's out there is a great way, because people want to help young people succeed, and it's essential for our society. So don't negate people's desire to help. You got to be open to it.
I think on a little bit of a side note, could you walk us through the LSAT and the bar exam itself? 'Cause
Yes.
a lot of people, they say a lot of these terms, but they don't really understand what the LSAT and the bar are. So if you could walk us through your journey
Sure.
into those tests.
The LSAT is the law school admissions test. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on it, but my opinion is that it doesn't have anything to do with the practice of law. It tests the skills that a lawyer's supposed to have, but what you really learn about is in law school. Just learn how to take the test and do well at it. Just solely focus on how can I get the most points out of the test. You're not going to have time to finish everything. You're not going to know everything, but figure out where you can get the points. It's a little bit similar to the bar exam, but the bar exam is actual real law that you have to memorize.
Right.
I spent 4 months preparing for it. Wow. The Pennsylvania and New Jersey bar.
Okay.
So with the bar exam, you have to make it like a job, because you can't cram. Those who crammed, even the smartest students, didn't pass. So, but what I did and what my friends did is we started earlier than everyone else and practiced more. We didn't burn ourselves out. We didn't practice 12, 14 hours a day, but we spent more days doing it. As you sleep, your brain collects and organizes information. The more practice you get, the more natural it becomes. And when I took the bar exam, it was a question that I had no idea how to answer, the very first one.
Oh my God.
So at first I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? But then I took a deep breath. and I thought, what is the structure I need to do to get the points? Intro statement, arguments. What are the issues? What are possible solutions to the issues? Even if you're not sure if it's the right answer, they have to give you points.
Right.
So doing that, even though I didn't know the answer, I was able to pass because you have to think like a lawyer, and that gives you the points to pass it. But there's no substitute for making it like a job and taking your time and not cramming.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that like analyzing the situation, just like you did with the bar, I think that could be really helpful to, you know, anyone who's looking for anything. And so how would you go about like analyzing situations and understanding your surroundings in real life? Like just as like, yeah.
So one of the things about lawyers is that we're trained to think of the worst case scenarios all the time. You have to analyze every situation, called issue spotting. So you're always looking for where things could go, what are the different avenues it could go. But in your personal life, if you're always thinking about the worst case scenario, then you're just going to be stressed out all the time.
Right, yeah.
So you have to think about both the good and the bad. Like, what are the chances of success of something? What are the chances of issues or pitfalls? And you can't dwell only on the negative. But that's one of the most important pieces. And I think also for high schoolers and Gen Zers, there's a lot of stressors in the world. And even as millennials, you know, we feel it too. But, you know, there's also a lot of good as well. So you have to take some time and find the good. Like, for example, the weather today is awesome. So just go outside for a few minutes and bask in the sun. And then it can help you in terms of dealing with other tasks. I find more and more as I get older that taking care of your emotional and mental health is so key, and it makes you much more successful at what you do.
Right.
Yeah, like, well, we'll shift to a little bit of a humorous note. What do you think about the show Suits?
So Suits would not have happened in real life. I mean, the amount of background checks you need to become a lawyer and pass the bar, it's not only passing the bar, you have to pass a character and fitness exam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Which my own dad was sent documentation to verify when I worked part-time for him, like 7 or 8 years prior to taking the bar.
Right.
That's how scrupulous they are. So they would have found him out super duper duper fast. Now, I think some of the struggles that the main character went through are legitimate. So in the first episode, for example, when he or the first or second episode, when he talks about how the other side was trying to file a motion to dismiss and he got all worried about it, the older lawyer was like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. You have to zealously advocate for your clients. So even if it's not going to be successful, it's a game. One side does one motion, one side does another. Litigation's a battle.
Right.
So, and I mean, certainly, you know, lawyers do like to network. They like to have parties. They like to gather. Lawyers do get very stressed, but they also feel really good about what they do for the most part. I think the emotional stuff of it is legitimate in terms of firm politics and things like that. My firm, luckily, is not like that. We're very family-oriented practice, but actually getting to that point was very unrealistic.
Right.
A lawyer show that I think is very good, however, is The Good Wife with Juliana Margulies. That one, more of the legal cases were accurate in terms of how they followed the law, what different courtroom actions were like, and even showing how some judges, you know, sometimes judges are correct, sometimes the judges get it wrong. That's why we have a system of appeals.
Okay.
I think my biggest takeaway, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, is when you said that lack of experience is not equivalent to lack of talent. When you were discussing that case you had with, I forget, but it was a lawyer who's been in law
Longer than I've been alive.
Exactly, longer than you've been alive. And I think that's crucial advice for high schoolers to hear, because now everyone thinks that they have to be number one, they have to be on top. Well, in reality, you have the talent, you just need to know how to execute it.
Yes, experience and competency are totally different things, and it's important to keep them separate. Because there's no one right way of doing something. And even, you know, for lawyers that practice 30, 40, 50 years, every case needs an individualized analysis. No case is the same. The way the law is too. I mean, I could give probably 5 or 6 hours of lectures just on how one law can have so many different meanings, how courts can interpret it differently. Yeah. And it's always changing too. I mean, the Supreme Court changes all the time. So thinking about, you know, that there are certain arguments that you're going to make that even in your first few years of practicing that no one's ever come up with before is pretty cool. And that's what actually levels the playing field a bit. And that's the other reason why it's important you be a consummate professional. Be direct, be honest, but be a good advocate, do the work, and the judges will see that quickly.
Right. And so one like key value that I feel that everyone should have, I mean, just like going around talking to a bunch of people as well as yourself, leadership. So what do you like think about leadership, and how do you think this plays a role in just mindset and like how everyone, is able to convey themselves or just, network with other people?
Do you mean in terms of how to develop leadership skills?
Yeah, how to like develop leadership.
I think the most important thing is making sure people can trust you. When there's that trust that's developed, people will trust you to carry out things you ask of them.
Right.
So, I think creating an atmosphere of inclusivity, of recognizing others' talents, because being a leader is not just you barking orders, it's recognizing the talents of others and having people work as a team. My wife does a really great job of that, and I take those lessons into the law practice too. But it's not all competitive. Collaboration, being a team, whether it's sports, whether it's in a business, allow you to make a much better product and better service.
Right.
So people have to trust each other, and that's really the most important thing.
Exactly.
That's absolutely great advice. And I feel like everything you've said today has had some sort of like great value that our listeners would love to take
Thank you.
into their own life. I mean, great conversation. Thank you so much for coming today.
Exactly.
My pleasure.
And I also feel that like you were able to give guidance to some of the kids who were a little bit, unsure about what they wanted to go through. And through your experiences, I'm sure they will learn a lot.
Many people go through multiple career changes in their lives, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing is stay true to yourself, be open to possibilities, don't be afraid to talk with people, and again, take care of yourself because, life is short, but it's also fascinating, and to not get bogged down in the small stuff. Really take time to enjoy things because it's going to make you that much more successful.
Perfect. And I feel that that's an amazing ending note. And I feel that that would be key to all our listeners. So thank you for listening.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mr. Meltzer.
Brewing success.
One sip at a time.